Welcome back to Sikkim 365 Radio. It's time for Craig Smoak's Off the Radar. Brought to you by Pickup Outfitters. Since 1997, we've been outfitting trucks, SUVs, and vans at 220 Lake Air Drive or createacommotion.com.
All right, welcome back into Sikkim 365 Radio, Off the Radar. Taking a look at some stories that are off our normal discussions, but covering a lot of different sports, and we'll stick with college football right off the top. A major injury was announced today. Oregon head coach Mario Cristobal. The Ducks have been ravaged with injuries so far this year, and it's just gotten worse as they've announced that running back C.J. Verdell will miss the rest of the season with a lower leg injury. The injury occurred in the third quarter of their overtime loss to Stanford a week ago, and at the time it seemed like it was probably not good, but C.J. Verdell is officially out for the rest of the year. He's in his fifth year at Oregon, but just a junior because, again, as we acknowledged earlier, there's no telling like how many years guys have left, so he does have time left, but he's a damn good player and was having a nice start, and so that's brutal news as the Ducks get ready to host Cal on October the 15th. They get to lick their wounds a little bit, but that was a loss. That loss to Stanford kind of derailed them and obviously derailed the Pac-12 a bit, and this Verdell loss will derail the Ducks, maybe not in the loss column necessarily, but it's going to have an impact and could lead to some of that.
Yeah, that's it's amazing. You have the huge win. It looks like you're going to vault yourself right into the conversation when you beat Ohio State, and things just haven't gone well since that time.
That's a gut punch.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep, a pretty bad injury to say the least. So, too, is the one to LSU star cornerback Derek Stingley Jr. He is now out indefinitely. He's been talked about as like a top 5 to top 10 draft pick going back to last year and maybe even a little bit before that, quite frankly. But he's been long pegged as a guy who will be playing on Sundays. And Ed Orgeron announced that he has been ruled out as they get ready to play, as he remains ruled out. So Derek Stingley, what a player. And then he's going to be out for the foreseeable future. So, that's a big blow for LSU.
I would say that we've probably seen the last time he's worn an LSU uniform.
Yeah, and I should say he had a foot injury, surgery on the foot. I didn't mention that.
I mean, just because of his prospects of the NFL are so incredibly high, it would really shock me in today's college football to see him come back and play for a team that it's going to be in the medium level bowl.
Whose coach is on very much a hot seat right now. If you're Derek Stingley, and you do wonder too with these guys and the injuries. I mean, look, it's more of a business now, right? I mean, these guys got to make NFL decisions when they're hurt. It's not necessarily like how quickly can I get back to help my team. And if LSU's not in contention and we know he's going to be drafted come the springtime, then I would not be surprised if you're right, Paul, and he has played his last down with LSU. So those are two big-name college football players in the last 24, 48 hours who have been announced as missing the remainder of the year. So that is definitely of note. Urban Meyer, I just saw a clip from a few minutes ago. The Jaguars were out on the practice field, and they were breaking the huddle, and Trevor Lawrence, I think, said like the typical Urban line or something. I didn't quite get the joke all the way, but he broke the huddle with grind, which I guess is maybe what Urban does, and everybody started laughing afterwards. So the reporter who had filmed the clip said, all right, Trevor Lawrence having a little bit of fun. Either things are going to go really well for the Jaguars this weekend or things are going to continue getting really bad. As that team just tries to hold on. There's been all sorts of rumors about, whether or not Urban's going to still be there for very much longer. And, Jaguars fans are already dealing with names being brought up as potential fill-ins. And Jeff Fisher's name got brought up, and that caused a lot of commotion amongst the Jaguars fan base from what little I could see. What would you think about a Jeff Fisher sliding in there? Because there's a lot of people that are looking at his record, and they're going, no freaking way.
Well, in the middle of the year, absolutely not. Yeah. And Jeff Fisher's just one of those guys who, to me, feels like his time in the NFL's past.
It's the retread.
Yeah.
He has had, at times, some success. There's a reason why he was able to hang around. Pretty good defensive coach, right, for some years. He's a retread. The NBA's filled with him. Baseball's sometimes filled with him. The NFL, there are some retreads. He, to me, would be an absolute retread.
The great thing that the Cons did in hiring Urban Meyer was that they were thinking – outside, like, let's see what we can get out of this guy who is one of the best college coaches going right now, and let's see what happens. Now, what I think that they I don't think you can probably estimate until you're actually in the realm of Urban Meyer is the amount of nonsense that comes with him.
Yes. And speaking of Urban Meyer, staying on Urban Meyer, by no means everybody's had their jokes and their cracks and, this and that, but there are real people involved, and that includes his wife. And she actually posted a message on social media, and I'll kind of just leave it alone after this unless there's some reason to really bring up Urban Meyer, because I do have respect for people's personal lives. But she did go on to Twitter apparently and speak for the first time. She said, "Thank you, friends, followers, fans, supporters, for all your love, fun, laughs over the years. God bless, and God bless America. Peace out." And then she had like a bunch of emojis, and she said, "This will be my last post on Twitter. Frankly, I don't need the hate, vitriol, slander, trash that will at me. This has never stopped anyway. We all make mistakes. We are all sinners. If you think you are, then cast the first stone." And then she thanked her followers and friends and then mentioned that she'll be deleting the message right after she posted it because she does not want to see the responses. So that was Urban's wife commenting and deleting her social media. And, now it's kind of back to football, and we'll see what happens with the Jaguars this weekend. But it is very early in the season for all this to be going on. That's the one thing. If this was like November, you could all right, let's eke it out. But, man, they got a long way to go.
You know what? That's good for her. And secondly, that's who he has to answer to, along with the football owner of the con. But you imagine where we are today in social media, that even though she had nothing to do with any of this, she's going to be the one getting some hate.
Oh, yeah.
Why don't you jump him? Why don't you and it's just good for her. When Facebook went under this week for whatever time it was,
6 glorious hours.
I wonder how many probably enjoyed that and just deleted it. Craig, you've deleted yours years ago, correct?
I deleted mine when I first moved to Waco, so that is going on like 8 years now that I have not had it. I deleted it for not just I'm taking it offline. I deleted it 8 years ago. I have not looked back. I have not rejoined, and I have not missed it one iota, not one single bit. I'd say the only downside to it is that it is the perfect little platform for just seeing what people are doing and keeping track of who's married and who's got kids and things like it, congratulating people on milestones and all that. But I got a small circle. I already know all those dates and don't need Facebook to remind me. I haven't missed it. But, social media is what it is.
I deleted it off my home screen because I do have people who contact me on it quite a bit. But that way I'll just get an email and then I'll go to it then. But I haven't since it went down, I haven't been to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't miss it.
But you once relied on that heavily.
I did. I relied on it heavily.
I liked it for a long time, too.
The only time that I use it now is to post things that are professional. And that's pretty much what my social media is. It's not it's if you contact me, I will respond to you. I have the respect to do that. But if not, then I'm just gonna put professional stuff up there. I think that's the best.
I still have a page, and on occasion I'll get this alert that there's some people who want to have me. I don't do that. Very rarely.
I'm just weird. I don't worry.
Good for her, by the way.
Yeah. No, I kind of cut bait with everything and then just move along.
No, I'll fight you for TweetDeck and Twitter. Don't even think about it. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
That's where I get my anger out with some people.
Twitter is good sometimes, but like everything else, sometimes it's not. All right, Jared Butler, former Baylor basketball star. He was looking pretty good on Wednesday night. Team high 22 points, 4 assists, 1 rebound as the Jazz lost to the Mavericks 111-101 with the NBA season starting to rev up a little bit. Had a shooting night of 9 of 18 from the field. He was 3 of 7 from 3. He's been very, very good in the games that he was appearing in during the preseason, and there's starting to be a little bit of a buzz building for Jared in Utah and what he may do, and the fact that he may be an under-the-radar type of a guy. A lot of people know about him because of his time at Baylor and the national title and the win over Gonzaga and all that, but he did fall in the draft because of some health concerns, but I mean, the Jazz have a lot of history of Baylor basketball. It seems like Jared's starting to cook a little bit. I'm excited to see what he does this year.
Yeah, I feel like we know half the roster with Maceo, Jared, and Royce O'Neal there. FAU was there for a little while last year too. So, and then Dennis Lindsey is the GM. Jake Lindsey's one of their scouts. So.
There was a game, I guess it was the game a couple of days ago with Teague and Butler had 34 points combined. Now, I know it's a lot of guys are getting to play. And eventually you'd kind of tighten that up, but it was cool to see O'Neal, Teague, Butler.
I bet you Maceo's at the end of the bench. I don't think he's going to be in the rotation like Jared will be, but I bet you he makes it.
But you know what? I also saw their stat sheet. And, there's going to be times when both of them had 2 steals. Both of them had 2 assists. They do more than score, but they can mix it up a little bit too. So that was good to see that as well.
Yep, so good to see Jared Butler thriving. I don't think that it surprises anybody who watched him at Baylor, but he is doing well and off to a good start. Bizarre story out of the NBA involving some former players. 18 former players have been indicted in an alleged $4 million scheme to defraud the NBA health plan. NBC New York reported today that 18 NBA vets were named in an indictment, all facing a count of conspiracy to commit healthcare and wire fraud. And they have a list of the names, some of the names that you might recognize: Glenn Big Baby Davis, let's see, Shannon Brown, Sebastian Telfair, Antoine Wright, Eddie Robinson, so on and so forth. No, like, huge name star. Like, there's not like a LeBron that's involved in this, but why would he need to? He's making good money. He doesn't have to defraud the healthcare system. But according to one of the articles, there was a 3-year scheme that involved former players submitting fake reimbursement claims for exams and procedures that were never done. The indictment alleges they took in around $2.5 million from a total of around $4 million in fake claims. The ringleader was former 11th overall pick back in 2009, Terrence Williams. He's accused of having impersonated an insurance plan employee as a part of the scheme, and he is the orchestrator. They had false health plan claims, fake invoices, la-di-da-di-da. So it was all for medical and dental services. And, they got busted, and so now we'll see what happens. But, I think these guys were a little bit out over their skis and did not obviously take care of their money while in the NBA.
Yeah, Darius Miles, another guy who was
and Telfair was one of my, you mentioned.
Yeah.
So they were claiming insurance.
Yeah, I've heard people doing that.
And they weren't hurt?
Yeah.
Yeah, that happens. Fake
claims.
So do the doctors know this?
Well, maybe not.
That's not really the way they work.
This is just a short time after Clinton Portis, Tamrick Vanover, and Robert McCune all pleaded guilty in the same thing to do it for the NFLPA. They were doing the same thing with that. This one obviously larger, way more than 3 people. But there's a lot of scams you see where people think because insurance companies are so backed up, or the government, you get people with the government, that they just make all these claims, and then the thing is they're backed up, but they audit everything eventually.
Yeah,
and that's when you're going to get caught.
Yeah, so I'm sure they had somebody on the inside that was helping them out, or at least signing things or whatever. But yeah, they're basically saying, hey, I had an MRI. It cost this much money. They get the money in return for that from their insurance or whatever, but they never had the MRI. So that's what they were doing, and that they were just stacking up money. And like that amount of money for that many people involved, like.
Well, and
is that worth it?
You're talking about a sport with a minimum salary.
Well, yes, that's what I'm saying. Is clearly these guys did not manage their money very well, because none of them were making millions off of this scheme. Like, they were splitting tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe, because there's way too many people for $4 million, which I don't even think they got that to add up to that much, really. But
if you're making a lot of money and someone leaves a briefcase and says this is illegal, but there's $58,000 in here. That's kind of like what happens, right?
Well, yeah, sometimes you can't.
And okay. Well, that'll be interesting to see if they serve any time.
Now it's all about jail time for those guys. And I'll close out with a sport that does not get talked about a lot on this show because we're so football consumed. But how about that Dodgers walk-off last night? Huge win over the Cardinals. And the Dodgers continue to move on. Final 3-1. And, big 2-run walk-off home run from Chris Taylor for the Dodgers. So what a game.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Last night, though, was the first time this year that I've watched a Cardinals game. And I watch a lot of baseball, but I'd never really turned on the Cardinals. And my thoughts had nothing to do with baseball. It was, that's what that dude looks like. The center fielder, what's his name, Jack? Yeah, Bader looks like he's the 4th lead in Point Break, and Mike Schilt, the Cardinals manager, looks like a high school chemistry teacher that coaches the JV team.
Let me tell you, Bader gets the pick of whoever he wants. You could just see that. I mean, he should be on The Bachelor or something. I mean, that's a good-looking dude, right?
Honestly,
it is.
When I saw Harrison Bader, all I thought was he was one of the dudes that Patrick Swayze got shot in the bank robbery in Point Break.
He could play Hercules. He could, he's. Hey, by the way, Tony Altomore brought this up on Craig, the NBA thing. Read the details. Even it was egregious. They didn't even change the receipt details of the dates of some of these things that they turned in for money.
They all pretended to have the same root canals at the same time from the same dentist.
Yeah, well, is it shocking to you that these guys aren't the smartest bulbs in the room? No, I don't think so, because I think they probably didn't handle their money that they did make in the NBA very well, because why else would you do a scheme like this to make really pennies compared to what your average NBA salary is, and to have to go through the process of doing all that? But yeah, I mean, that's can't cover every detail, but the fact that they were using the same receipts for the same fake thing, I mean, that's stupidity at the highest level.
I'm in no way endorsing crime here.
No.
But if you're going to be a criminal,
when you say "but," you are.
Okay. But if you're gonna do it, at least try.
Yeah.
There's some radio stations have at times over the years dumb criminal stories, or stupid criminals.
No, dim-witted behavior by those guys, and I don't know how it's going to end up going for them. So, anyways, last night the Dodgers with a huge win. They'll now face the Giants in the next round of the playoffs. But ongoing right now, Astros up 5-0 over the White Sox in Game 1 of that ALDS series. They're in the bottom of the 5th right now. So Astros halfway to a 1-0 start. And later on tonight, it'll be the Red Sox, Paul's Red Sox, and the Rays starting just after 7 o'clock.
They weren't going to be here. They weren't going to. Hey, let me tell you something. The Dodgers won 105 games. And they end up having a one-game playoff, which could have gone either way, a bad hop or whatever. They win that game. Now they turn around and play a team that won 106 games, and so have they. It's just the way the tournament bracket sets up. It's like somebody asked earlier on the chat room or text line. If, in fact, the SEC gets two teams in the Final Four, the college football playoff, and they most likely will, should they play each other in the semifinals? Will they seed them 1 through 4 where they play each other in the final, or will they say, no, you're 1, you're 3, you're going to have to play each other in the semis?
Oh, I would think that they're going to split them up.
Why? Because the Giants and Dodgers have 106.
They would have just played.
They just played. They had to play each other in the conference title game.
But sometimes that happens in the conference title game. You just play a game in the regular season.
But didn't the rematch of LSU-Bama lead directly to a college football playoff, basically? Yeah. So, I think you got to do it. But that's not why you seed them that way, is it? No, but I'm just saying that that thought has to creep in, because obviously you're talking about it. So I'm sure it creeps into their heads as well, of what's better for us, what's better for ratings, what's better for the sport. And quite frankly, I think Georgia-Bama, if they're both at that point, and they're playing the way they are right now, and they're still at that point later on, and depending on how
that's the absolute exception. I'm not saying that. I'm talking about if you have two teams from the same conference that get into college football playoff, those two are just outrageous.
Well,
would you separate them in the 4?
But that's this is the best example because they're both so good. So I think you gotta.
But what if one sneaks in? One of them's not like they are those two right now. Would you still
separate them? But one of
them's
but they can't sneak in because one has to lose, right before the announcements are made, because they're going to have to play each other.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
So you wouldn't sneak in. You're playing each other. No, and if they're not playing each other, then they're not two getting in.
In another year, if they don't, it was a question on. I don't know.
I know what you mean, though.
I just think with a conference title game, there's no scenario where somebody would sneak in.
Well, we know we can't trust them, because the College Football Playoff Committee has been fraudulent in many ways of what they've said over the years in how they have put teams together. They look good in a blue suit.
Yeah.
They look good coming off the bus. They managed or controlled the game one week, and the next week was, they won the turnover battle.
But if you're the TV executives, you wouldn't want that to be a semifinal game.
No, you wouldn't. And I probably as a fan wouldn't either.
What I was trying to say is that if those two teams are where they are at the end of the year, and yes, they're going to have to play each other to have this whole scenario even happen. Now, if Bama were to blow out Georgia or vice versa, which I don't see either scenario happening, then the chances are nil that they probably both get in, depending on what happens around the rest of the country. But if you have a chance, depending on how that game goes, I don't think you want to turn right around and run it back. I think that if anything, if it's a good game, you'd want that to be like the national championship game. And
the other thing, just on a pure, I don't know. Look, the reason that Alabama LSU was bad was because LSU beat Alabama during the year and then got no reward for doing that. They just had to turn right around and play them again. In the playoff, if Georgia beats Alabama in the SEC championship game, they should at least get a chance not to have to play them right away again, but let somebody else get them.
And it's amazing, though, the way we're sitting there and saying that they both should. Right now, yes, they're both well ahead of everybody. Penn State, Iowa, they like to disagree. Maybe somebody else.
Well, right now they wouldn't play because they'd be 1-2.
Yeah, they'd be 1 and 2. They wouldn't play but they're going to play in the SEC championship game unless something crazy happens. All right.
I know what you mean, though. Like, you don't want to – I mean, you want it to be legitimate, but I think there is room where there's not going to be that much separation between the 4 teams where if you can all but help it, I mean, that Georgia-Bama game, like, depending on how the conference title game goes, if they both get there, I mean, and let's say it's a close game, I mean, the build-up for a potential national championship rematch versus, hey, let's turn it around and play the semifinal we just watched. That little bit of a break and then that little bit of a build-up, I think, would make for a huge viewing audience.
And I just think that added to the fact is the winner shouldn't have to play the loser right away again.
Yeah, that's the simplest way to say it, too. Yes, that's a good point.
All right, here we go. 5 o'clock hour. We're already a little bit into it, but we do have